Welcome, everybody, to the Sales Expert Channel. So glad you could be with us today as we talk to you and share some insights. So I wanted to get us started now and just introduce to you Mark Winter. So I'm going to let Mark share a little bit about his background, but welcome to everyone. We're thrilled to be here on the Sales Expert Channel and look forward to digging deep together today. Mark?
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, thanks for the intro, Jamie. Appreciate it. My name is Mark Winter. I am the CEO of WinSource Group based in Tacoma, Washington. We're a sales consultancy. We work with business-to-business sales organizations and help improve overall sales performance. My background is I've been in sales for as long as I can remember. So I've held just about every sales role out there. I've been through just about every sales training that there is. And the reason I decided to make this leap to help organizations with their sales performance is because as I came up through the ranks, whether it was as an individual contributor or leading and building sales teams or looking at things from the sales executive roles, I felt like things were complicated. We overcomplicate sales sometimes. And so I wanted to work with organizations to keep things simple, to keep things easy, and to help salespeople succeed, to help them win. So that's a little bit about my background. I've been in sales for 25 years or so. And like I said, I work predominantly with business-to-business sales organizations today as doing sales training or sales process development or sales performance management. So Jamie, how about you? Can we hear a little bit about your background?
Absolutely, Mark. And thanks for sharing that about you. I have over 25 years of experience in sales leadership, and in the talent acquisition industry specifically. I started my company, ProActivate, 15 years ago, almost 16 years ago now, Mark. It's crazy how time is flying. And really, I did that after serving as vice president of sales at Career Builder, and prior to that was in traditional recruitment firms, and just saw a gap in the market for leaders of sales organizations to really be able to protect and propel revenue as it relates to talent. So I love working with organizations to proactively protect their number one asset, which is their talent, either by building a funnel of talent to be prepared in case a top performer leaves or gets promoted, or to replace C players with A players, or just to help the organizations grow and expand. So specifically, we're talking about hiring the best and upgrading the rest. I have written a book, How to Source, Qualify, and Hire Elite Sales Talent, and that may be of interest based on the topic today. But very excited just to dig right in here as we talk today about how to do this well, because obviously, we've got to get the best of the best talent now more than ever with our current marketplace. And not only do we have to get them, Mark, but as you know, we have to really help people be the very best they can be and maximize their level of performance. So I think one of the biggest mindset shifts is thinking of our talent as our number one asset and having a funnel of talent. We always talk about our revenue funnel, but a talent funnel is critical to that revenue funnel. So if a top performer were to leave or get promoted, we'd be prepared. It's astounding. The average cost of an open position is $1 million in revenue. And so I often ask the question, and it's a hard one for us all to answer, but do a few top performers deliver most of your company's revenue, while the rest, the majority of your people, barely keep your company's revenue, or just earn their own keep, so to speak, possibly lose you money? And this is the performance gap. We all know about the 80-20 rule, where, just 20% of people, the top producers, produce 80% of the results. And the ratio, of course, isn't always, 80-20. Sometimes it's 70-30, 60-40, or whatever the case may be. But the situation the ratio describes is always the same. And it's the vast majority of people produce a fraction of what top performers produce on the very same sales teams. And so it begs the question, do we have a funnel of talent, or are we keeping C players too long because we don't, and we just have more of a reactive strategy to talent acquisition, which is not effective? And the impact of a proactive strategy versus a reactive strategy is astounding in that it causes us to hire the wrong people. If we're reactive, we sometimes compromise. And when we don't have that funnel, we don't hire the A players. We're too quick to make hiring decisions with the wrong people. And listen up, the wrong hire costs 30 to 500% of total compensation. And another really important statistic is that talent accounts for 29% of the difference between high and low performing sales organizations. So it's very impactful to have a proactive strategy. There is a 67% variance in production between top performers and poor performers. Poor performers really are something we just can't afford. It costs not only our leadership time, but it lowers the overall performance of the team and tells the rest of the team that we accept mediocrity. Whereas a top performer, like I said, there's a 67% variance in production. They rapidly set the pace. They're the pace setters. They generate revenue quickly, and also the morale of the entire organization is boosted by this energy. The productivity levels of the entire team increase with top performers. So it makes a very significant impact. One of the ideas I would propose to you is building, so to speak, revenue insurance. Over $1 trillion are spent annually on sales forces. And so it proves the emphasis that businesses are putting on their sales forces. So think of sales and marketing talent pipeline as revenue insurance or life insurance for your business, so to speak. And it is a mindset shift, but it truly is critical to our success. If you think about what really makes up a high-performance organization, there are a few key factors. There's the talent piece, right, which is what we're focused on today, and the development of that talent. But there's how do you ensure you have the right bench of talent for growth? Then there's planning. How are you building qualified pipeline at the territory level and accurately forecasting your business? And then there's the process. How are you qualifying, advancing, and closing opportunities, and then nurturing those customer relationships? And then, of course, there's messaging. How are you articulating value of your solution and what makes it different from the competition? So these are things that are really critical for us to evaluate. So it's time to think about, do you have the right sales and marketing talent in place right now to exceed your revenue goals for 2021? One of the things I think we all need to do on a consistent basis is evaluate our team to ensure we're set up for great success. And there are a few key factors to consider in that. One is, what's your typical turnover? If you can predict your turnover, then you can proactively be qualifying top talent so that you can be ahead of the turnover. What are your growth plans is the other part of that equation to evaluate. Where are you going to need talent just based on growth alone, whether it's vertical or geographical, whatever the case may be. And then if you look at your team today, what current percent of C players do you have versus A players? That's very critical to consider. So when you look at those three factors, it's important to then say, okay, based on our turnover, our growth, and our percent of C players, we need to add, let's say, 10 people next year. And if that's the case, you need to qualify at least 3 great people. for each open position. So you would need to be interviewing 30 people in that year proactively so you could be prepared. So that's just a great formula, is to think about, okay, how many qualified interviews do I need based on my turnover, C players, and growth plans? And then in addition to that, one of the most important things we need to think about is what is the ideal candidate profile. I think sometimes for sales and marketing talent, we get, we just meet with people, we get excited, we like them, we feel like we enjoyed lunch or dinner or discussion, and we want to hire them. But as in dating, the same is true for recruiting. If you don't know what you're looking for, you don't know if you found it. And so you have to know what your ideal candidate is so that you can be prepared and know when you find it. The other thing that is really important in a success formula as it relates to talent acquisition is creating your competitive differentiators and your story in the marketplace. If you want to find top talent, you want to look for people who are working and winning and doing well, where this would be a next step in their career. And if that's the case, you're courting them. Essentially, that's what we do for our clients. We court them on behalf of the client, and you're not looking necessarily for the people looking. So you're going to want to really have your competitive differentiators and your story in the marketplace stand out. The next step to the success formula is creating a talent acquisition strategy, so to speak, and that's based on your ideal candidate profile. And the mindset behind that is, where are these people out in the marketplace today currently working and winning, and how do I capture them there? What types of networking groups are they a part of? What types of trade shows do they go to? What types of journals are they reading? Where do they go online looking for leads or business acumen? How do I capture them there? Where are they socially online? What types of companies might they work for that we could direct source them from? So you want to be very creative and specific as you look at that. And then, of course, a talent evaluation plan. And that's very, very important as well, because this is the step that we often forget is, okay, how are we going to evaluate this talent? It's really important that you have a customized qualification process that aligns with your ideal candidate profile. And when we work with our clients and we're evaluating talent on their behalf, we spend an hour and a half to 2 hours on this piece because that's how critical it is. And there's really three main components that I would encourage you to include that are really important from our perspective. There's the skill set component that we have to evaluate. And of course, I think we all do that, like their sales success track record, their sales methodology, formula for success, territory management, planning, comp history, all of that. But then more importantly, there's the mindset component. It's the will versus the skill, the grit, the commitment to excellence, perseverance, optimism, determination. And so open-ended behavioral interview questions in the area of skill set and mindset are both critical. In fact, mindset accounts for 80% of success, whereas skill set only accounts for 20%. So it's critical, and most companies leave this out of the interview process. And the third component that we always include, and we suggest others include as well, is a simulation evaluation of some kind, really seeing them in action and key components of the sales call process. And finally, obviously, we have to make offers that cannot be refused if we want to hire the best of the best. And then we have to ensure a strong onboarding process so our new sales team members or marketing team members can make an immediate impact. So those are all really, really important things as it relates to hiring the best. Mark, I'd love you to take it from here.
Yeah, so let's talk about upgrading, and that inevitably leads us into this conversation about training. And training is one of those green words. It's a word that has multiple meanings, I think, in an organization. Sometimes when we talk about training, we think about coaching. Sometimes we think about onboarding. Sometimes we think about performance management or skills training. And so what I thought we would spend some time talking about this morning or this afternoon is how to get your arms around training. So in preparation for today, I started thinking about what would be valuable for organizations when it comes to training. And here's what I settled on. I think one, we have to know how to measure whether or not training's working, which means we've got to figure out what training impacts. And so I'm going to share that with you. I'm going to give you the things that I look at in an organization to determine whether or not training's working, which will give you some metrics that you can potentially look for in your own organization. Then I thought that we'd talk a little bit about a training framework, if you will. So too often I run into organizations that have training checklists. And while those are handy from an HR perspective to ensure that people have done all the right things as they've come into an organization, they're not always well thought out from the perspective of the trainee. And so I wanted to leave everybody with a framework that you could use in your organization to kind of organize that checklist or organize the training that you go through. And then last but not least, I want to talk about how you can impact those metrics. So I'm going to give you a couple ideas on things that you can be doing right now, pretty easy things to implement that will help you impact training metrics. So that's what I'm going to go through next. I threw this quote up here: the only thing worse than training employees and losing them is to not train them and keep them. It's one of my favorite training quotes. And, you know, I think we're in an interesting time when it comes to training, because for those folks that were used to working in tight groups, we've now been dispersed. Many of the salespeople that I work with are now working from home. Leadership is working from home, or they're trying to keep their social distancing in the workplace. And what that does is it kind of de-emphasizes training. It makes it harder to train, frankly, because one of the things that we gravitate to when we have a distributed network of salespeople or marketing folks is we go to e-learning. Or we jump on the Zoom calls and we do some training. And what I'm feeling is that a lot of the training that's being prepared now through the course of 2020 is kind of ad hoc. It's either sent to a sales rep, like here it is, do it on your own, or hey, let's all jump onto a Zoom call or a WebEx or something, and we'll do a training that way. And it's less thoughtful, it's less planned. And I think going into 2021, we've got to kind of make a shift. We've got to make a commitment to invest in our people, because having a more distributed network of salespeople puts us at risk for turnover. It also puts us at risk for people left to interpret training on their own. So I'm going to give you some ways to combat that. But first, I want to set the stage, Jamie. It's funny that you mentioned looking at candidates like dating, because I put in here that I think once you bring that candidate on board, it's like a marriage. And sometimes it's right. So I love the analogy. Thanks for teeing that up for me. You know, sometimes it's a good marriage or a nice reciprocal relationship. Sometimes it's like an arranged marriage, not so much so good, right? So we want to be on the reciprocal side, where we have an opportunity to bring people in and have them fall in love with our organization, have them fall in love with the leadership team, have them feel like they're a contributing member to the relationship. And we get one shot at that. We get one chance to kind of set that up at the beginning of the relationship. And I think that that's often missed. You know, I reflect on my own experience. I've had really good onboarding experiences, and I've had some really bad onboarding experiences. I remember particularly one time I joined an organization, and in my first couple of days with the organization, I felt like nobody had time for me. I felt like people were kind of walking around me. I wasn't introduced to very many people. In fact, what I was told was, here, sit down in front of this e-learning system and start making your way through these trainings. And so for the first couple of days, 8 hours a day or so, I sat through some really horrific onboarding, and I felt kind of disconnected from the relationship. And when I think about a new onboarding employee coming in, starting a relationship, that makes me so sad. It makes me sad that people would go through that. So I would encourage you to be thinking about, when you bring somebody on, you're bringing them into a relationship, and there's a honeymoon period that starts then. And I like to think that there's an excitement that goes with starting a new job. There's excitement and anticipation with bringing on a new employee. And so we need to kind of capture that in this honeymoon period, because that's what's going to set the trajectory on how engaged people are going forward. So the more we can put into that honeymoon period, the better off we're all going to be. So thanks for keeping that analogy alive, Jamie. Appreciate that. So you're probably wondering, yeah, thanks. So you're probably wondering, okay, well, let's break it down. How do I measure training? So we'll talk about the onboarding experience in a little bit, but how do I measure training? How do I actually know that I'm making an impact, that my training's working? Well, here are the three buckets that I look at. So when I sit down with an organization, oftentimes at WinSource, we do strategic planning with executive teams. And inevitably, when we start that strategic planning, one of the things that comes up as an initiative is training. And so to remove ambiguity, we'll start to ask questions around, well, what do you want the training to impact? And generally, training impacts these three buckets. So the first bucket the training impacts is time to productivity. And that's usually coupled with onboarding, but it's when we bring somebody on, how fast does that person get to full productivity? And by full productivity, I mean they're 100% responsible for their target or quota or the actions day to day. And so it's in an organization's best interest to ensure that the person coming on board gets enough knowledge to be productive, but we want to control and potentially benchmark that time to productivity. We want to make sure that we know how long it's expected for a sales rep or a new employee to get to productivity. I've seen organizations where even within the same role, some sales reps tell me that they were at full productivity at 60 days, and some sales reps tell me it took them 8 months. Now, as you can imagine, there's a lot of things that impact how long it takes to get to productivity. Training is one, leadership is another, having mentors in an organization is another. There are a number of things that can impact that time to productivity measure, but it's one of the key measures for bringing new people on. So if you haven't yet figured out what your marker is for time to productivity, when your average new employee hits that productive mark, that's something you're going to want to figure out, because it's a great benchmark to have. And there's a ton of money to be gained by improving that simple benchmark. Okay, second one is ROI on sales roles. Here's the deal. Salespeople are a different breed in my mind from other employees. Many other employees show up on a P&L as a line item. They're an expense. That should not be the case with salespeople. Salespeople should have a measurable ROI, a measurable return. If a salesperson isn't paying for themselves, then something needs to happen, either retraining or new training or something. But a salesperson should be measured by the dollars or gross margin dollars that they bring to the organization. One of the most common measures I see with salespeople is an ROI, like a 5X or an 8X ROI on the gross margin dollars that they bring in. And it's going to be different for each organization. There's a lot of dependencies there on things like the size and scope of the sale, the velocity of how quickly the sale progresses, how long it takes to actually get a sale, the type of business that you're in, whether it's product or services. But you should have some sort of an X measure, 3X, 5X, 8X measure on what that salesperson's bringing to the table to ensure that there's an ROI on the role. Every sales role should come with an ROI. Now, the way we get that ROI is we train them. We have to find people that have product knowledge or sales skill and bring them in. And then the last measure is turnover. And turnover can have an incredible impact in revenue. We'll talk in a little bit about some of the experiences I've had with that, but turnover is certainly, and Jamie mentioned that early on, you've got to know that turnover number, because there's a ton of impact in your top and bottom line when it comes to turnover. So those are the three measures: time to productivity, ROI on sales, and impact on revenue. So you're probably thinking, okay, that's a lot of stuff. It sounds confusing. Like I'm not sure I know how to impact those things. So I'm gonna try to keep it easy for you. I'm gonna put each one of those measures into a bucket. I'm waiting for the slide to advance. Oh, there we go. I was building anticipation there, I think is what I was doing. Okay, here are the three buckets. So of those three measures, here's how you impact them. Number one, have a good onboarding plan. So when you have a good onboarding plan, you control the time to productivity, and that's key. So let's say, for instance, in your organization, you find that the average new employee gets to full productivity around the 90-day mark. If you have a good onboarding plan, you can ensure that that person gets the training, the resources, and the tools necessary to hit 90 days, or even maybe get to productivity a little bit faster. The faster you get them to productivity, the faster you can be holding them accountable to the things that you hired them to do. So onboarding is absolutely key, having a good onboarding plan. And we'll talk about a structure for that here in just a couple minutes. The second, when we talk about a salesperson's ROI, well, that's going to be driven by their skills and technical knowledge. So when you make a hiring decision, you're doing it in one of two ways, especially when it's a sales role. You're either looking for sales competency, and then you're going to give them technical knowledge when they get there, or you're looking for somebody that's got technical knowledge, but then you're gonna show them the way that your organization sells. So when we talk about how to ramp up a sales rep or how to provide ongoing training, sales methodology training to a sales rep in an organization, you're really looking at it from two lenses. One is we've got to have training that's all about technically how we sell, so our products and services, and then we've got to have sales skill training potentially on our sales methodology or sales process. And so what I find is organizations often have a blended version of this, which is absolutely okay to do. You can have a blended version of technical knowledge and sales methodology. But it's much more effective if we've called those two things out separately, and we can allow employees to apply the skills needed, either with direct coaching or specific training, like to bring them up to speed on technical knowledge. So my encouragement here is take a look at your sales methodology training and see if you can pull out the stuff that's technical versus the sales process stuff. And then look at your past hires and ask yourself, are we typically bringing on people with good sales skills and then we have to tell them about our products and services? Or are we bringing on people that are knowledgeable about the industry and the service that we provide, but we have to just show them how things are sold here? What that will do is start to streamline your training approach. So you'll be able to have more tailored training directly to the people that need it in a way that's going to resonate with them the best. Okay, last one, ongoing training. And this is where this is all part of upgrading. Ongoing training is our ability to coach and ensure that people are doing the job correctly while providing additional resources to up their game. And so sometimes that can present itself as good coaching for managers. Sometimes it can be extended learning training. It's going to be different for every organization. But these are the three areas that you have to have dialed in. If you're going to really upgrade your talent, these are the three areas you've got to ensure that you've got a process for. So number one, good onboarding practice. Number two, skills and technical knowledge, preferably tailored. And number three, ongoing training, which is best served in the form of coaching from your mid-level managers. So I told you I'd give you a framework to kind of put this stuff in, and this really relates to onboarding. But we use this thing called the W model, and the W model is a process. We use it for organizational alignment, but it also applies well to onboarding and training. Let me show you what I mean. So if we think about three phases of training of a new employee when you're bringing somebody on, there's that first phase, the honeymoon period that I spoke of earlier. There's the period where they start to know and understand their role and expectations. And then there's the third phase where they're actually outperforming their role and they're getting ongoing training or coaching. So if we look at this W model, we say, okay, the top of the W is where the organization lives, the executive team, let's say, and the bottom of the W is where the individual lives. Then in the first phase of training, that first honeymoon period, the goal, the framework should be all things that help that individual fall in love with the organization. This is where we have an opportunity to show off our culture, to show off our values, to show off our mission, our vision, all the things that we think attracted that person to the organization. And we have an opportunity to get it really deep rooted so that they're feeling connected to the organization. It's also a great period to introduce them to other influencers. So it can be other rock star salespeople or other great hires in the organization. It can be a place to assign mentors. This is not the place to sit them down in front of e-learning and have them check off a list. This is the place to really make some connection with the organization. And if you do that well, if you get that fall in love with you period, that honeymoon period to the new employee well, then they become open and receptive to everything that follows. So let's talk about next step. So arm 2 of the W is where the employee learns how they're going to contribute to the greater good of the organization. So this goes from the bottom, from the employee up to the overall org. So this is where the employee figures out their role, figures out the expectations, but more importantly, sees where they fit in the greater scheme of things. So they see where hitting target and achieving the goals and metrics set before them is going to matter to the organization. They'll also get an understanding of what happens if they don't. But this is where the person begins to find their place in the overall org. Another great place for them to either be assigned a mentor or other people that can contribute to their ongoing learning. Arm 3, coming back down from the top down, is application of skills and knowledge. So this is where the organization starts to pull out checklists and training. So this is where we introduce the new employee to our sales methodology. We tell them what's unique about our organization, maybe sharing with them competitive advantage. But this is where we start to show them the real technical aspects of their role. We're starting to get down into the weeds here at this point. So we're bringing them into all of the things that are going to make them successful. We're sharing with them best practices. We're inviting them to take training, whether e-learning or in-person type training, instructor-led training. We're potentially getting their feet wet by introducing them to the marketplace, letting them engage with customers or prospects. But this is where they really start to understand the way things are done in your organization and how you've got things structured for them to be successful. And then last but not least, the fourth arm of the W is performance coaching. So this is where we just let them fly. So we kick them out of the nest, we put them out into the marketplace, and we give them the opportunity to succeed, and then we provide them with coaching and counsel, kind of ensuring that they have some guardrails around them so that they're getting immediate feedback. There's a feedback loop that happens where they can get performance improvement by either hearing some critique, things that they did well or things that they could improve on, or perhaps getting real-time feedback with ride-alongs or coaches or things like that. So I'm gonna take a breath there. I know I just threw a lot at you. This W model for me serves as a framework. Again, I think about early on, let's get them to fall in love with the company. Arm 2, let's get them to understand how they contribute to the greater good of the organization. Number 3, make sure that they absolutely know what's expected of their role and know how to represent your company well. And Arm 4, let's let them out there and then provide some feedback and coaching overall. Go back to these measures. So the W model that I just shared with you, the process that I just shared with you impacts each one of these measures. And I wanted to give you some guidance. And this guidance is really from my experience. You have to figure out what works well for your organization. And whether it's me or somebody else out there, you might enlist help of others to figure this stuff out for your org. But let me give you some guidance on averages that I've seen. So when I think about a sale, and I'm thinking about a sales rep role here, so a new sales rep to an organization. When I think about time to productivity, the average in my experience is about 90 days. Now, again, I'm telling you that I'm working predominantly with business-to-business sales organizations, often in the services space. But oftentimes what I'll find is 90 days is enough ramp time for a new rep to come on board and feel like they can make a difference in the marketplace. It's about the 90-day mark where I recommend to clients to start holding people accountable to a target. Second is ROI on sales roles. I threw out a 5X model here because I think for me in business-to-business services, that's kind of the minimum. That's the starting threshold on what I expect salespeople to do. When I hire a sales rep, if I were in a business where the average sale was say $25K or $30,000, I would figure out the gross margin dollars of that sale, and then I would hold my sales reps accountable to a 5X model on gross margin dollars. So for instance, in a $25,000 sale, if we were working with a 20% gross margin, I get a $5,000 per sale gross margin dollar. So I'm thinking that rep's going to have a 5X model of gross margin dollars on their overall salary. So let's say with a $50,000 rep, that rep needs to make, $250,000 in the first year of gross margin dollars, for me to feel like that they've provided that 5X model on the role. And I know I went through that quickly, so if you've got questions for that, you can pop it into the question box. Then the last point is impact on revenue. And what I would recommend here on the turnover piece is there's a tipping point. So in the organizations that I've worked with, oftentimes second year revenue from a sales rep can be almost twice as high as first year sales revenue. So what that means to me is if I can get reps to second, third, fourth year of revenue, it's worth more money to me. That rep is higher productivity. They're making a higher return. There's a tipping point that happens where after they've gone through the honeymoon period, after they've gone through their first year of training, kind of getting their feet wet, where the revenue they bring to the table really starts to accelerate. And I want to know where that tipping point is, because that's the place that I want to apply the most coaching. So in this third line on turnover, coaching is absolutely key. This is the place where coaching and engagement is what's going to be a huge impact on turnover. And I would ask Jamie for her opinion, but it's been my experience that engagement and good coaching is one of the best things to do to prevent unnecessary turnover. Jamie, any thoughts there?
I totally agree with you, Mark. And I think, too, with that engagement, it's that real relationship with their leader. You know, it's that engagement from their leader, and just having the leader truly understand how they can add value to change the trajectory of their success, where they really make a difference there. So, yep. Yes, I absolutely agree with you.
Great. Thanks. Appreciate you sharing that. Mm-hmm. So what's next then? What do you do? So you've attended this webinar. You're thinking about, okay, what are my next steps? First thing is see if you can find those measures that I gave you at the start. See if you look in your organization and see if you can figure out when productivity starts, what your onboarding program looks like, what coaching happens, what is your turnover number, what's the ROI metric for the salespeople that you're bringing on. That's first. That's the very first thing you should do. If you don't have those metrics, then find somebody to help you get some benchmarking done, because I think you'll find that it'll be much easier to measure whether or not your training's working. Then the next thing you do are these things that are up on the slide. You sit down and you find out if you've got a solid onboarding plan. And I would use something like the W model that I shared with you earlier. Onboarding is not just about a checklist. It's about making sure that you're engaging the employee from the start, that you're kicking off that relationship, that marriage, that honeymoon period, the appropriate way. So take a look at your onboarding plan. If you don't have one, draw a line in the sand and decide when you're going to create one. Number two, good sales methodology. So make sure you've got a good tailored sales methodology, good sales training, so that you can ramp people up quickly on both product knowledge or technical knowledge and on your sales process and sales methodology. And again, like I said, the best way to do that is a tailored approach based on the people that you're bringing on. Last but not least, have a good manager coaching. So you've got to have some kind of ongoing process where your managers, the key to success is having your managers work with your employees for engagement and ongoing performance management. And it needs to be a process. It can't happen ad hoc. It's not effective when it happens ad hoc. So look at the training materials and training process that you have carved out in your organization for manager coaching. And if you don't have one, then draft one, get one going, draw a line in the sand. Okay, that's my advice on upgrading the talent. So I think at this point, we have an opportunity to take some questions. So there's I think there should be a question box from the participants. If anybody has any questions, you can feel free to drop them in the box, and we'll hang out here for just a second. Jamie, any other comments while we're waiting for questions to come in?
No, but I really, really appreciate all the information you shared, Mark, and it is so important. And really, no matter how well we help organizations find talent, or no matter how well the organizations find their own talent, it doesn't matter if we don't put these training measures you spoke about into play.
Right.
And really help people maximize their success and be the best that they can be. So what you shared is so very valuable, and I am really grateful for that.
Well, I appreciate that. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate the thought process going into it, and I hope it was helpful for the folks that were attending. I am monitoring the question box. I don't see anything in there. We can give it just one more minute.
Yeah, I don't think we have any questions at this time, Mark.
All right. So Jamie, maybe what's the outlook for thinking about 2021? People that are listening to this are probably getting prepared for 2021. How's the marketplace feel as far as availability of candidates or people out there? Are there a lot of people looking? What's the marketplace feel?
Well, Mark, for us, we are looking for working and winning talent on behalf of our clients. So there are a lot of people looking, probably more so than ever, just because the unemployment rate's up because of all that's going on. But in the area of sales and marketing that we're speaking of, typically it's the C players that have gone first. And certainly there are some anomalies on that, but it's not, it's finding the needle in the haystack. So for us, no matter how many people are looking, you're kind of looking for the people that aren't looking. And that's what we're focused on. The market is looking great in terms of companies and realizing that now is a wonderful time to try to find the best of the best talent. There's a lot of movement in the marketplace, and people have really, taken a lot of time this year to consider what's most important to them. And I think that makes a big difference as well. So, yeah, I think there will be a strong marketplace next year. We're seeing a lot of companies hiring again, and things are in play. So, and then I just wanted to remind the audience, Mark, to post a review for us and download the attachments and subscribe to the Sales Expert channel. So we are very, very pleased that you joined us today, and really appreciate your interest in this topic, because hiring the best and upgrading the rest is critical to all of our success. So thank you, Mark. And on behalf of Mark and I, we are grateful for your time and much success. And we wish you continued success and much sales success in the future.
Thanks for having me, Jamie. Take care, everybody.
Take care.